What is going on, Lucid fans? Welcome back to Financial Journey. A lot of people asking the exact same question. When is Lucid going to be coming out with their Q4 delivery and production numbers? So I want to break it down, potentially when that might be and what it might look like coming from an investor standpoint. So I'm going to go over all the stuff you need to know, but first, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. With that, let's get right to it. So this tweet right here really does put it in perspective on exactly what Lucid's done up until the end of Q3. So at the end of Q3, they did 3,687 vehicles produced, 2,437 vehicles delivered. The 2022 target is between that 6 to 7. Of course, it did start out at 20, got reduced down to 12 to 14, and then further reduced down to that 6 to 7. But in reality, all they have to do is roughly about 2,300 vehicles to hit that base number of 6,000. And of course, we already know based on what happened with Rivian and Tesla, when a company does miss out on their final year-end targets, definitely not a positive sign. But in Lucid's case, the fact that they've lowered it so much, I personally feel it's very much easily attainable that they can do over that 7,000, because in Q3, they did say that they're doing 300 vehicles a week. So if you do the basic math, that works out to be roughly about 3,600 vehicles produced just in Q4. So that would put them well exceeding that 700. Well, technically not well exceeding, but it is above that 7,000. So very much positive for Lucid and its investors. Of course, they could have encountered some problems potentially in Q4 that would have reduced it a little bit, but even beside the point, even if that did happen, all they would have had to have done is 2,300 vehicles to kind of be within that range. So in general, I think it's very much positive. On a side note, I just want to take a step back and explain something to you guys. I know Tesla did start out with issuing their delivery and production numbers. Other EVs and automakers kind of followed suit because of peer pressure, and that exactly is what happened with Lucid. Lucid didn't do that in the past up until their recent Q3 earnings, like I said, because most likely peer pressure and expectations coming from an investor standpoint. Because obviously investors are saying, why is Rivian doing this? Why is Tesla doing this? But technically, coming from the company's standpoint, from Lucid's standpoint, they don't need to do that. The whole point of their actual earnings is to go over all of these numbers. So the fact that people are now assuming that this is going to be coming, I don't know at this stage in the game. Lucid might still follow the peer pressure aspect and actually issue it, or potentially if it's negative, they might just wait until their actual earnings. There's a lot of different ways to play it out, but technically from a company standpoint, there is no expectations of actually issuing that. But I just wanted to share that with you guys because I think there's some assumptions, like I said, that they have to do it. But regardless of all that, I did a couple polls, one of which on Twitter, the other one on YouTube, on potentially how many vehicles does individuals think Lucid produced in Q4. So this is Twitter, under 2,000, 2,000 to 35, 35 to 5,000, and over 5,000. Oddly enough, there was 380 votes on here, and there was no real major outliers. Of course, a lot of people feel it's between that 2,000 and 3,500, but definitely looking at the percentages, didn't really stand out. And versus on YouTube, so 847 votes, and once again, under 2,000, between 2 to 3,500, 35 to 5, and over 5. Oddly enough, people on YouTube are very much bearish, you can tell, because majority of which feel that it's going to be under 2,000. So I don't know why potentially, but maybe my subscribers on YouTube are very much bearish now on Lucid. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. But as far as when it might come out, potentially, as if they were to do it. So once again, we can kind of look back at what happened previously, more specifically in the Q3, on when they came out and kind of put it in line with what might come this way as far as the Q4. So as you can see, October the 12th, Lucid did announce their production numbers and also their actual earnings date and time frame. So they announced November the 8th, 2022. But in this kind of a PR, they did go over the actual delivery numbers. So production and delivery and various things. Again, that's very positive, the fact that they did that, most likely because of peer pressure and expectations from investors. But technically, like I said, earnings date was set on November the 8th, so roughly about 3 weeks notice. And I think Lucid is doing that 3-week notice anyways because they give an opportunity for retail investors to kind of think of questions and pose them to management. So I think Lucid is doing very positive things by issuing that kind of time frame of 3 weeks, because there are some companies out there that maybe give 1 week notice or even less. So definitely you have to be very much appreciated of Lucid. And on a side note, this is annual earnings that is coming up. So they're going to be issuing both the Q4 and annual 2022 earnings. And technically companies do have 60 days to submit it. And looking right here on based on what previously happened, February 28th, 2022 is when they did actually have their earnings call. So they left it right down to the wire. Like I said, 60 days, so very, very close to the tail end. I do anticipate them to bump it up a week or close to that, because at this stage in the game, they were still kind of struggling with ramping up. They were trying to gather all their information together. And this would have been one of their first annual earnings that they did submit to the SEC, where they were a publicly traded company. So I think in general, there was a lot of expectations from them, from investors, like I said, and you kind of get what I'm saying. There's been a lot of expectations from investors on a lot of different things. So I think in general, Lucid's gone down quite a lot because of just purely expectations from investors. But once again, if you take a step back, as I've always been saying, and realize Lucid is going to be a long-term investment, definitely reduces the expectation on Lucid and maybe makes you feel a little bit more positive about some shortcomings. But once again, I'm not a financial advisor. Do your guys' own due diligence at the end of the day. So potentially I do see them bumping it up 1 week. So it is fair to say most likely the second week of January is when they might be actually coming out and issuing this kind of notice as far as production, delivery numbers, and the date of the actual earnings as well. So once again, I think there might be a lot of positive things to come from this earnings. I'm going to do a whole separate video on potentially expectations of this earnings and what investors should really look for. So once again, let me know your thoughts on that. On a side note, in the comments below, let me know how many vehicles do you think they're going to actually produce, and if you think this gap between the actual produced and delivered is going to widen. Because of course, based on Bear's workshop and the latest flyovers, it does look like it is expanding. In my own opinion, of course, like I always say, I like to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly. So it'd be very interesting to see exactly what Lucid does say in their actual Q4 earnings. But with all that, I really appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. If you do like my channel and support the growth, take a look at my memberships, link in the description below, or just hit the join button at the bottom of the screen. With that said, appreciate you guys watching, and let's all make a lot of money on Lucid.